What a lot of people didn't realise with Cumberland, it was a family. There was a very family orientated. Staff worked in the same departments for years. Quite often you would find different staff members, their relatives worked there in some form or fashion. So I started at Cumberland in 1978 in January. I just finished 3 years in the army, and I got out of the army when I was 20. Come home, and my father and mother both worked at Cumberland. My father worked in nursing, mother worked in cleaning, and when I got home from the army, my father said that I needed to get out and get a job, and that there's always jobs at Cumberland, they're always looking for workers. Go down and see the manager.
I personally started my initial nursing training there at the age of 18 in 1976. My mother had worked there in the 1950s, so I had that connection back to the 50s, but then when I started nursing there, I met my partner, Michael, who was a nurse educator. Michael's father had started nursing there after the Second World War, and his father worked there. And his father had started nursing there in about 1904, and his grandmother, as a matter of fact. So Michael's grandfather and grandmother started nursing at Parramatta in about 1904.
There was a kinship in that. And you had a lot of nursing staff, because they lived there and were educated there, came from the country areas, they used to like it. They'd be at the pool. You know, you'd get to know them at the pool, and or you'd see them jogging around the Oval or different things like that.
Cumberland Hospital in particular opened up to the community very early on. It opened on the 31st of December 1849 as a public asylum. The second medical superintendent, Dr. Richard Greener, was appointed in 1852. In 1855 he reported that bushfires were threatening Parramatta, and he sent out groups of patients with male attendants to fight the fires. And he was really pleased to report there was no attempt at absconding. Everyone came back safely. So, I mean, they were engaging with the community. He also opened, the first one to open up the hospital to things like shows. They had dances and shows, performers come in, and that went right through through the 19th century. In fact, into the 20th century.
And then there was also various hospitals used to have inter-hospital Olympic Games. And that was, if you knew the games were coming to your hospital, you'd have to do long jumps and high jumps and track events. And so there was, you'd be showing your hospital off. And yeah, there was always a barbecue to be had, and sort of joining together and just mateship. There was always something new. There was always something to learn. Cumberland, particularly in its early days, was a self-contained place.
I call it the western side of the river, which is towards Westmead Hospital, became the main farm, and on that was built a big dairy and a piggery, and also crops were grown. They had orange orchard leading up to the Wisteria Gardens. It was a major farm, and it was to help produce, create produce to subsidise, patient food. So they had fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, as much as possible. Also, it was a good way of getting rid of the waste, because there's a lot of food waste after dining rooms. So they actually had a cart that went around and collected all of the waste and took it over to the pig farm. And so this became this system of, like a model farm. That farm was started, as I said, in the 19th century. It was expanded quite a bit in the early 20th century by Dr. William Cotter Williamson, who built the Wisteria Gardens. By 1929, the then medical superintendent, Dr. Guy Percival Underwood Pryor, what a great name, he opened the gardens to the public. And then the nursing staff got together and thought, well, why can't we make this a big event? And so from 1930, the Wisteria Fete was born. And that was born, public coming in, and patients, things that were made by the patients were then put up for sale. There were toys that were made by the patients. There was linen, all sorts of things, and jams and all that sort of stuff. And it was all supported. And that Fate existed until 2017, and it brought, at its height, it was bringing in 40,000 visitors a year.
It's like I said to people when I used to do a walk around, an evening walk. Some would call it the ghost walk, and others would call it this, and I'd say, no, it's an information walk. And people need to know that these things were around. I enjoyed the whole literary from day one. You know, there's always days you say, oh gee, I didn't, you know, that wasn't a good day. But I enjoyed it from day one, and it was very upsetting to leave. So, yeah, it was my life.